بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين الحبيب المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, may all the praise be to God, and may the peace and blessings be upon all the prophets, especially Prophet Muhammad, and upon his purified progeny and the believers of his companions. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and the blessing be upon all of you. So we start tonight our Qur'an study with verse number 60 in chapter al-Furqaan, chapter number 25. Again, I will read the Arabic as usual, the verse in Arabic, and kindly Hajrada will read the translation, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذا قيل لهم اسجدوا للرحمن قالوا وما الرحمن أنسجد لما تأمرنا وزادهم نفورا.
When it is said to them, prostrate to the most compassionate, they say, who and what is the most compassionate? Should we prostrate just because you order us to? And it only drives them further away.
So pagans used to make sujood and prostrate to idols. When the Prophet ﷺ called upon them to prostrate toward God, before God, the most compassionate, Ar-Rahman. You know, in our faith, God has many attributes and many names, and one major of them is Ar-Rahman, the most compassionate. So the Prophet called on them to, instead of worshiping idols and prostrating to them, worship God and prostrate to God and only God. In return, in a very mockery tone and mockery way, they said, what is Ar-Rahman? And instead of saying, who is Ar-Rahman? This is a language, you know, who is used for people or for those who you respect, people or God. And what in Arabic, which is ma, the word ma, is used for objects. So in a very language of disrespect, they said, what is Ar-Rahman? Pretending that they do not know the word Ar-Rahman, the most compassionate. Of course, this is something that they claim that they do not know Ar-Rahman. There is a debate whether they really did not know and they said, what is Ar-Rahman? Or they pretend not to know, and the way they responded was to show disrespect to the Prophet, to God, to the revelation, to the faith of Islam. Ar-Rahman, we've talked about this before. Ar-Rahman is one attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that means that the mercy of God is available for every human, for every creature, and for including every human, even those who do not believe in God, those who decide to reject God. We believe the word Ar-Rahman means God mercy is extended to those. So the pagans decided to ignore what does this mean, and they said, do you expect us to prostrate to whom you tell us just because you told us? Of course, we are not going to listen. We are not going to obey you. And the Quran says, in fact, that made them, this invitation of the Prophet to prostrate to the most compassionate, made them increase their dislike or their distance from the faith and dislike of the faith and the Prophet. Yes. And this is typical, you know, sometimes people with a lot of ego, they get to be stubborn. Even when they hear the truth, they, you know, they decide not to accept the truth because of their certain interests. They get emotionally stubborn and reject the truth, though they know that they are not on the right side. They know that what they are rejecting is the truth, but they still become stubborn and the way they deal with the truth. Now, probably in your copy of the Quran that you have, there is a mark next to this verse. If you have a book like me, in the front of you, I don't know if it is on your digital copy of the Quran. A mark next to this verse, in my copy, there is a mark next to the verse right here. I don't know if it is showing, you see. This is the mark here. Possibly in your Quran as well. I'm not sure. Some would have, some maybe not. The mark says sajda. The mark says sajda, prostration. So what does this mean? There are a few verses in the Quran that when somebody recites them or listen to them with attention, he or she should make sujood, prostrate. Now, there is a big difference among madhahib, about the school of thoughts within Muslims, about this issue. Differences into how many are these verses? Are they mandatory? Is it mandatory to make sujood, or is it recommended? And what are the conditions to make sujoods? What are the conditions to make a proper sujood? So there are different opinions I would like to mention very briefly. There are madhahib and school of thoughts who say the number of altogether these verses are about 15. Some say they are 14. Some say there are 11 verses altogether. Those who follow the madhab of Abu Hanifa, they say altogether there are 14 verses that when somebody reads, he or she should have to make it's mandatory, have to make sujood, prostration. Other school of thoughts, except Ja'fari school of thought, Imamiyya, they say these verses, when somebody reads or listens to them, it is recommended. It's not mandatory. It is recommended to make sujood, all of them. So there are now two schools of thoughts. Those who follow Abu Hanifa, they think it is mandatory. Others, they believe it is recommended. Now, the third school of thought, it is the Ja'fari school of thought, the Imamiyya. They believe that only 4 of them, when you read 4 of these verses, which I will mention in a brief later in a second, the one who recites and the one who listens should make sujood, sajda. What are these verses? These verses are mentioned in 4 chapters. Let me mention the chapters very briefly. Chapter number 32, Surah al-Sajda. The chapter is called al-Sajda, chapter 32. Then chapter 42, Surah Fussilat. Chapter 31, it is in Juz' 21. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Chapter 32, Surah al-Sajda, is in Juz' 21. The part is 21. Chapter 42, Fussilat, in Juz' 24. There is a mandatory verse there to make sujood. And chapter 53, Surah An-Najm. This is in Juz' 27. And then finally, chapter 96, Al-Alaq. This is in part in Juz' 30. These 4 chapters are called Surah Al-Azaim, the chapters of Al-Azaim. When you read that verse, that specific verse, that there is a mark on it, then you have to prostrate. And if you listen and paying attention, you might hear without paying attention. It is not mandatory. But if you listen to it, you pay attention, you have to make sujood. So only those 4. Other verses, it is recommended. If you like, you make sujood. If not, it is okay not to make a sujood. Now, what if you heard this verse on a recording, whether it's a radio recording or on the internet? Is it mandatory? No. When it is recording, it is not mandatory to make sujood. Only when you hear it from a person directly, or there is a live broadcast. Imagine right now I recite, and you who hear it right now, then you and I, we need to make sujood. But if it is recorded and then broadcast later and somebody hears it later, it's not mandatory to make a sujood. So this is basically about the mark sujood that, beside this verse that I wanted to mention. When you make sujood, prostrate, what do you say? Typically you say what you say in a regular sujood. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la wa bihamdih. You may add, Sajadtu laka ya Rab ta'abbudan wa raqqa. I prostrate to you, my Lord, out of my devotion and total submission to you. Yes. So the next, if there is no question or comment, we'll go to the next verse 61.
I guess I have a question. Excuse me to interrupt.
Yes.
How were they who decided to make sajda on these specific verses? How were they decided?
So apparently this is the sunnah of the Prophet. This is a tradition that the Prophet used to do. And then we follow his tradition. When these verses used to be recited, when he would recite or somebody recites in his presence, he and Muslims would make sujood. So we basically follow the sunnah of the Prophet. Yes. All right. Verse number 61. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا.
Hallowed is he who made constellations in the skies and placed among them a radiant lamp and a light-giving moon.
So the Quran goes back again to the book of nature. If you have been following this chapter, you will notice that the Quran makes reference to nature frequently. And this is, in fact, a feature of all chapters that were revealed in Mecca, that the Quran always make a reference to things in this universe and in this in the nature, and draw our attention to contemplate about it, how these phenomena have been created. Now, the Quran says, if you do not know who is Ar-Rahman, let me tell you who is Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman, hallowed is the one, is the verse is using the word tabarak, tabarak. We've talked about this word right in the beginning of this chapter, because the beginning of this chapter also starts with the same word, tabarak. Tabarak, people use this word with two different situations. When we talk to one another, we say in Arabic, Barakallah fik, may God bless you, or may this event be a blessed, may Ramadan be a Ramadan Mubarak, a blessed month for you, or this occasion, or this day, or this house, may it become a blessed for you. So we ask God to bless, send more blessings on you, or on the property you own, or the time you consume, so on and so forth. But when we talk about God, that's a different issue, because God, he is the source of all the blessings. So when we say toward God, we don't say Mabruk, we say Tabarak. In Arabic, we say Tabarak, because he is the source of the blessings. And one of the translations, I've seen many translations to this words like blessed be God in the heaven. I believe that's not the best translation. The best translations is the one used by Asad, Muhammad Asad, and he said, he translated into hallowed is the one, which means he is holy, he is eternal, he is the source of all the blessings in this universe. Now, hallowed is the one who made constellations in the skies or in the space. Yes, there are constellations in the skies. There are dozens of constellations in the skies. Today, when I was making my research, apparently there are about 88 constellations and known constellations in the skies. However, the constellations that the Quran is probably talking about, or the Arabs used to believe, first of all, what is constellation? Constellation is basically a group of stars in a certain area of the space or the skies, who perceive to make a figure of an animal or a person, a mythical person, or an object. Those who are in the path of the sun, or I better say, when the sun becomes in the front of them, in that position, they are 12. They are 12 because the sun, in the past, they believe the sun is orbiting around the earth, but it is the other way. The earth is orbiting around the sun. So when the earth is orbiting around the sun, this is the sun and the earth is orbiting, every month the earth would see the sun, people on earth would see the sun in a different position. Behind that sun, behind that position is a group of stars, visible stars that humans could see on earth. This is a group of stars. This is called constellation. And throughout the year, when the earth orbits around the sun, there are 12 constellations that the sun find a place, a position in the front of these constellations, group of stars. This is a very, very, very ancient concept. This is not a new one. It might goes to the Babylon time. It is believed that they have perceived such figures in the skies. What is the benefit of these figures and these constellations, which is in Arabic is called Burj, a singular of Buruj. The verse says, تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا. Buruj is constellations, and singular is Burj. Burj is constellation, and the other meaning of Burj is a higher building on earth that people used to live or make a post that they can watch who is coming, who's going, a security post, higher security post that soldiers would stay on top, and that's called Burj. And today, these towers, high towers, are also called Burj. Now, so this is a very ancient understanding and belief. The Quran came and said, who has made these constellations? It is God Ar-Rahman who made these constellations. What are the benefits of these? The benefits is that people on earth were able to calculate, to know and calculate the exact time and date throughout history and for the future. Today, scientists, based on this position of constellations, they can tell us the calendar of 20, 30, 40 years ahead with accurate calculation. So we get to know the calendar of the past and the future because of this positions. And remember, even now, modern science has discovered what is known as GPS, that is based on satellites who are positioned in the space, 3 or 4 satellites positions in different places. Those coordination of those 3 or 4, they can accurately locate things. We can locate and navigate our path through this system of communication with the position of satellites in the space with a very high accuracy. So the Quran is saying that God has made this out of his mercy, so you can calculate, you get to know the time and the date. And today there is another use of these constellations that has nothing to do with religion or with the Quran, which is what is known as the zodiac. People get to read about what is going to happen to them, or some fortune tellers would say, oh, because of your zodiac reading, this is what is going to happen, or this has nothing to do with religion or with Qur'an. Just because this word buruj has been mentioned in the Quran does not mean that Quran approves this kind of practices. And then it says, وَجَعَلَ فِيهَا سِرَاجًا. In fact, the Quran mentions the word buruj many times. And there is, in fact, a chapter 85, named after the word buruj. Then the verse says, وَجَعَلَ فِيهَا سِرَاجًا وَقَمَرًا مُنِيرًا. God, Ar-Rahman, the most compassionate, among those constellations, he has made the sun and a lamp there, and a light-giving moon. A very accurate expression. The sun is a lamp that emits light from itself. It's not from somewhere else. Emits light from itself, while the moon reflects the light of the sun. So the Quran expression is very accurate. It says God has created a siraj, a lamp that emits light by itself, and then the moon that reflects the light of the sun. Yes. And then it goes to the next verse. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وهو الذي جعل الليل والنهار خلفة لمن أراد أن يذكر أو أراد شكورا.
And it is he who caused the night and the day to succeed each other, for as a sign for whoever wants to be mindful or to be grateful.
Again, God, the most compassionate, Ar-Rahman, is the one who caused the day to follow the night and the night to follow the day, or the opposite, the night to follow the day. First it mentioned night, and then the day to follow the night. They succeed one another. This is out of his mercy and wisdom. Because remember, we talked about this before. If it was only light on earth, there would be the temperature would be extremely high. That would make life kind of impossible on earth. Or it was only night and dark, the temperature would be extremely low. That makes, again, life impossible on earth. Or could be one side always light, one side always dark. That would be also kind of impossible. But God, out of his mercy, made the earth rotate in a way that there is a few hours light, which we call day, and a few hours night, dark. This would make living on earth possible and even comfortable. So that's out of his mercy and wisdom. And then it says, this by itself is an interesting subject for people to contemplate about, and to know that this did not happen randomly. It happened out of design, a beautiful and accurate design, and also for a purpose. And it is also a subject, a matter worth giving thanks to. لمن أراد أن يذكر, this night and day succeeding one another is an interesting matter for people to think about and to give thank to. With this, we come to end of tonight's study, Quran study. Inshallah, we continue with a very interesting, inspiring, and enlightening subject of the Quran study, same chapter next week, inshallah. If there is any question or comment, please, I'll be glad to hear it. So are fighting with COVID, and for the blessings of the soul of those who departed, especially the names that were mentioned during this program. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صلوات اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you.